It is my privilege now to introduce Nikita Gupta. Nikita specializes in transforming trauma through healing and resiliency in educational as well as public and private settings. She's a recognized leader and educator and has worked nationally with at-risk communities, educational leaders, and community service providers. Nikita is the founder of the innovative GRIT coaching program at UCLA. The Guidance, Resilience, Integrity, and Transformation, or GRIT program, is nationally recognized as a model for excellence in mental health promotion, advocacy, and transformation for students, staff, and faculty. As a 2020 Fellow of the National Center for Free Speech and Civic Engagement, Nikita designed educational frameworks that are adaptable to various contexts for engaging communities in trauma-informed practice and embodied leadership. Nikita's methodology is interdisciplinary and includes neurobiology, positive psychology, and somatic education through prisms of community health and social justice. Nikita's work is rooted in practices of personal empowerment and social healing. Her ultimate goal is to recontextualize the untapped potential of healing, mindful awareness, and resilience into institutional spaces towards achieving a greater capacity for holistic success, thriving, and connection. She received her master's in public health from UCLA, and she's also a longtime yoga teacher and meditation facilitator. Her efforts to integrate practices of healing and restoration are dedicated to both individuals and organizations. Through training, coaching, and consultation, she aspires to uplift the collective in bravely moving through the unknown while finding joy and satisfaction in each day. So with that, it's my privilege to hand our figurative microphone over to Nikita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beth. And good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's truly a privilege to be here with all of you and to share the space with some incredible beings. And thank you, Navneet, for your beautiful story, and Liv, thank you. I'm so moved and just really feel honored to be in your company. Okay, so I'll begin. My name is Nikita Gupta, or Nikita Gupta, and I don't have a middle name. I go by she, her pronouns, and I reside in Los Angeles, where I've been for 20 years, over 20 years now. And as Beth mentioned in my very long and wordy bio, that I dedicate my time to help uplift others by creating spaces for healing and resilience. And I work with individuals and institutions to help build these inner and outer infrastructures for healing trauma, for greater embodiment, or just existing within these precious bodies that we have, and holistic health and community thriving. And my story of courage, we all have our stories of courage, and mine starts long before I was born. My ancestors, my lineage is from North India. My mother is a middle child from the big city of Delhi. And then my dad is the oldest son of 10 siblings from a small village named Modinagar outside of Delhi. My father used education to find a way for himself and his family out of the poverty that they were experiencing. I remember going to their home. We had the privilege of going to India multiple times, maybe every 2 to 5 years growing up. And I got to visit their home, his childhood home. And over time, I would see how it evolved and changed from having open sewer system to a closed system, to having a partial ceiling to a full ceiling. And so I got a flavor of what it was like for my father to grow up, although, I still don't know many of the details, and I think a lot of that he keeps to himself. But he used education with the support of his father. He used education to find a way for himself and his family out of poverty. And he earned a PhD in toxicology in India. And after earning his degree, he handwrote at least 20 letters and his resume 20 times, and sent them to various research labs in England and in the United States, because that's where you go as a young Indian person, holding these values of success. And so he wrote to these research labs, and after many months, he learned that he had actually received an acceptance from a lab that was situated in Houston, Texas, run by a German researcher. And this was the beginning of our story of migration. And so after my dad, he spent 2 years in Houston. He went back to India at the urging of his mom so he could get married. And so he had an arranged marriage to my mother, who was a young woman in her mid-20s, who came from an upper middle class family. And her parents really were excited about my dad because of his academic pursuits, because he had made it to America, and he was, he held that type of educational status and, the status of perseverance and grit. So after, for my mother, this is where her own story of courage comes in. She denied the proposals of several other suitors or marriage matches because she didn't want to get married. She was a young woman. She was happy being home. She had a job that she loved, working in advertising. But at this point, my grandparents were done. She was 26. It was time, and she was forced to marry my dad and leave her job, and then basically start a life in a new land. So she left her family for the first time to come to the United States alone with a man that she barely knew. And she made so many adjustments and many commitments to this new life, to be a dutiful wife, to uphold the hopes and dreams of her family back home in the same way that my father was also doing the same thing. And as she was giving birth to me 14 months later, all of her effort was now focused on this new little baby that would be the reason for her sacrifice. And so I came into the world with a lot of, feeling a lot and sensing a lot of responsibility as a baby even. And, growing up, after we lived in Houston for 12 years. And when I was 12, we moved, my parents and now my younger sister, who was 3.5 years younger than me, we moved to Lexington, Kentucky, where I spent the next 10 years. So, I grew up in very predominantly white conservative areas, towns where old colonial values set the bar for what it meant to be a good Indo-American girl. And in this straddling of so many different identities and not fitting in to any one of the boxes that I found myself in at home and outside of my home, I found myself quite alone, isolated, and very high feeling of invisibility. I used to walk across the street and wonder sometimes if a car could even see me if they were driving by. I felt so invisible. And at school, I spoke very little. I stayed quiet. And I ate lunch alone, and I struggled to find friendships. And when I did, it was awkward and just uncomfortable and a kind of a forced type of a situation. I was teased and called out to in ways that were confusing to a young person when I was young. And at the time, when I was in Texas, I remember two little white boys said to me, they were pointing and laughing, saying, "She's a Mexican." And in my head, I thought, well, I'm not Mexican, I'm Indian. And what's wrong with being a Mexican anyway? In elementary school, a little girl came up to me, she's also white. My mommy said that God made us all different and that some people have dark gums and some people have lighter ones. And I was like, my gums, like, wow, how do you even know what my gums look like? And then later in school, this was in Kentucky, which was, very difficult environment for me to be in, being the only brown person in a school of white kids. Some other kids ran up to me and pointing and taunted, "You should be at ESL. Why are you here? Go to ESL, it's over there." Whereas, I grew up American, Indo-American. And so I knew I was another, and I was being watched, I was being interpreted and assigned a position within society in my home and outside of my home without having any choice in that matter. And I couldn't share anything that was going on with my parents. They couldn't really hold me in my emotional needs. They themselves were dealing with a lot of fracturing that was happening in the home environment that I was a witness to. There were money issues. There was money that needed to be sent back to the family home. We were barely able to get by here in the United States ourselves with that perception of, oh, you made it, so now you can help all of us. There was fighting between my parents. There was unresolved pain and anger that permeated all of the rooms of the house. It was so thick, it was just difficult to move through. And so to help provide relief, I did my best to play the part of a good daughter. I buried myself in extreme perfectionism. I made sure I got good grades in school and that my handwriting was perfect. I rewrote my notes over and over again, just making sure the lines were perfect. This is just notes for class. And then my art projects were colored within the lines. I maintained the notion that I was going to be a doctor on the outside, even as the alarm bells were bright and red inside of my head, saying that no, this is not the path for me. I wanted to do emotional healing because we needed it so badly. And I pretended to not hear the many comments from my mother that told me that I would be married to an Indian man in my 20s and that I would be toting 2 sons soon after, while successful as a doctor, no, as a brain surgeon. And I would make my family so proud. And so I flipped back and forth between these different scripted characters, the one that I played at school, the one that I played at home, so that I could be a good girl, so I could give that impression. But on the inside, I was crumbling, and my voice, my truth, and my needs felt like they were trapped inside of my body and blocked in my throat. And there was no space for my anger, for my sadness, for my hopes, or my dreams. And so what I did was I hid my essential self deep inside of me, where her views, her aspirations, and interpretations of life could be kept alive in a secret place that felt a little bit more safe, protected, and possible. And here I held visions of a day where I could just breathe and say my thoughts out loud without someone falling apart on the outside. I imagined days that I didn't feel angry, that I didn't feel the intense physical pain that I carried in my low back, in my neck, and in my shoulders. And I prayed, and I prayed for freedom. The freedom to have my thoughts and to express them, and the freedom to have to be me in my body, the freedom to have my hair wild, to love my dark skin, and the freedom to laugh loudly, and the freedom to cry deeply. And I started to spend, so as I grew older, especially as a teenager, I started to spend my nights in the space in which I hid my essential self. My bedroom was also the prayer room in my home. And on our prayer table that my mom had, and all of the homes we grew up in, we held pictures of our Hindu gods, Lakshmi, Shiva, and others, as well as Jesus and the Buddha. And so for me, that was my savior. That was my saving mindset, the place that I rested my hopes and dreams, that we can find a way to find equity, just as we do across these religions. I can find an equity and be myself and all parts of me in the world. So in the nighttime, once the house was quiet, the fighting had died down, I could hear the chiming of the stars outside, and I would light a candle and sit and be with my dreams. And I'd sit and I'd breathe and I'd listen to my thoughts, I'd listen to my fears, and I'd wait for a sensation of blissful joy inside of me. And these were the nights, these nights were my anchors that kept me going. And so, through those many nights of weeping and crying myself to sleep, through all of that, I completed my bachelor's degree at the University of Kentucky in 1999. I fulfilled pre-med requirements while taking as many art and philosophy classes as I could. And I remember the day of my graduation, which in our American culture, and for my family, was a huge day of celebration. But for me, it felt like a crisis. As I walked through the stadium for my ceremony, I felt like I was looking over a cliff. And either I take a leap towards my freedom or I leap towards my end. And so in August of 99, a day came that I had been anticipating for many years. And this was one of the toughest choices I had ever made in my life. And still, as I look back, I've been through a lot of courageous choices and really difficult ones. And still today, this is the one that brings up a lot for me to even name. I know I have family here on the call too. So one night I grabbed a giant king size pillowcase. It had a beautiful rainbow on it. And I put inside of it a few pairs of clothes and some books and an instrument. I was kind of a hippie, I had Jack Kerouac on the road, and I knew I was going to go to California. I had many intuitive experiences that was where my home is. And I just, I needed to go. I just needed to go. And so I left a note on my coffee table the next morning saying, I'm moving to California. I need to follow my heart. I love you. And I left that. And I found myself, I left with, a partner at the time. We were on the road, and, as we drove down that highway, I had the feeling of the most exhilaration that I had ever had, the most elation, and the most sorrow at the same time, because I knew what this was doing for my family. But I had no choice. It was a choice that I had to make for me, and it was a choice for all of us. And so that was the beginning of that journey. And for many years, I since my time in California, I immersed myself in the study of healing practices, yoga, meditation, and numerous other modalities to help heal the pain in my body, to feel connection to myself again, to find my voice. And through that work, I was able to find myself in a different path than I had imagined, but really similar to what I had wanted as a child, to do emotional healing work. And that's what I do today. I, earned a degree in public health with the goal of really looking at healing and bringing healing to diverse community. As I spent a long time trying to fit in and find a home that will hold all parts of me, I work now to shift and and shape a home around me that will hold all of the parts, instead of trying to find that place that will hold me, and that will hold the light and the dark, the fear and the joy, because I know that it's okay and it's necessary for them to coexist in order for me to exist. I used to think that I'm a dishonor to my lineage, and there are still days where I have to remind myself that no, that's not the truth, that I am part of my lineage. I'm carrying my lineage forward, that I'm made of the body of my grandmother. I'm made of the body of my mother and my father, and their strength and courage lives inside of me. And when I am healthier, our lineage becomes healthier. And when I'm happier, others too can have permission to their own funky, nuanced joy, whatever that looks like for them in all of our various parts. And so I dedicate my days to helping others find the light that lives inside of each of us through healing practices, through dialogue, through exploration. And today, as I conclude my story, I want to, share with you all that we're celebrating Diwali right now. Diwali, Deepavali, there's different names for it. And it's a festival that's a little bit more known in this American culture in the last few years. And it's a festival of lights. And we celebrated it yesterday. We turn on all the lights of the house. We light candles, put candles on the outside to welcome in prosperity and abundance, to celebrate the harvest of our efforts. And so as I did that yesterday, and I, we have a rangoli, a little flower that we make with chalk or powder on the porch. And I claim that, and I own that yes, that this is a part of me as well. And that we can all just invite the light inside of all of us. So as we close, I wanted to invite all of us here in the circle today to remember the light that is existing inside of us. And it's been a really tough year for so many of us. And no doubt many of us here are already holding a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. But I want to invite us into maybe taking a few deep breaths and to look at the light that lives inside of us, and to feel that it's the light that got me through many years of pain. And it's the light that still I go to in my moments of despair, and my moments of confusion and fear, and in my moments of hope, to just go within and trust that it's there, and that I can choose that each and every day. So as we conclude, I invite you, if you feel comfortable to do so, to close your eyes if you wish, or have them open, and imagine a beautiful candle. And let that candle light, that golden light, grow inside of your being, or inside of the vision of your mind. And to slow down your breath, the breath which is our life force energy, the breath that gives us life and that carries us through our life experiences. And that we can honor our paths, because no doubt the stories that have been shared here already tonight have a resonance in our own bodies. If we can just honor our journey, honor the pain, the joy, our hopes and our fears, and know that they exist together, and that we have choice to keep choosing the light in every day. Thank you.
It's really, really beautiful. Thank you, Nikita.
Thank you.
Navneet and Livia and Nikita. We've just had 3 amazing storytellers so far. I'm grateful to each of you. Let's take a moment. Folks, feel free to share, continue to share your appreciation and recognition of our storytellers in the chat, and then we'll transition to our next person. So I want to acknowledge Paula Estes, who is going to be introducing Lawrence Reyes, who's our next storyteller. So I'm going to hand the mic over figuratively to Paula, and she will introduce Lawrence for us.
Thank you so much. I am feeling the light within. That was deeply meaningful, that meditation for me. Thank you. I Lawrence asked me to introduce him, and I was thinking, well, he's so many things. You might know him as an activist, a social activist, media, democracy activist. But I was thinking that since I met him through the LA County Department of Mental Health, I will take this opportunity to share a role, a hat that he wears that others might not be able to know about him. And so I think it was in 2013 when I met him, and back then my only goal in life was to not think about killing myself every moment of every day. And so when I met Lawrence, he was working and he was a part of my treatment team, and he facilitated a group that I attended. And I was thinking, if I was sitting waiting to see him in his office and someone were seated next to me at the Edelman Mental Health Center, that if they said, "Who's that guy?" I would say, "That's Lawrence Reyes." And they might say, "What's he do?" And I would say, "He holds the light." And they might say, "What light?" And then I would say, "The light at the end of the tunnel." And they might say, "What tunnel?" And I would say, "The tunnel of life, you know, that long, dark, scary, dangerous tunnel that we go through." He's gone through it, and he got to the other end, and he grabbed the light and he held it up for others to see and go through. And so my association with him is about that journey through the tunnel. And what I would want you to know is that the first conversation that I had with Lawrence was one where I had, he was a last resort for me. It was like a last resort. And I remember talking to him on the phone. At that time, I didn't know that there was a tunnel or that there was light, but he sent a vehicle to pick me up. He sent it through the tunnel, and that vehicle was hope. And he did that through his words, and the words that he offered me in that conversation was a culmination of everything that he had lived in his life, every trauma, every mistake, every success, everything that he was in that conversation. It was a short conversation, and he used just the right words to keep me hanging by a string. At least I was able to shift and focus my direction. And so during the course of this relationship, professional and then we have also become friends. He sent so many different vehicles through the tunnel for me to get on and move some of the way through it. And in the beginning, what he was offering to me was very basic life skills and tips for dealing with bipolar depression, and I used his tools and the resources that he was offering professionally. But the thing is that when he dealt with me, he held me as the object of his attention, someone who was down and out, someone who was at their very lowest, vulnerable, a wreck, a mess. But he didn't look at me that way. He was holding the light for me. And he was a powerful example of what my life could be. And he did that through his lived experience, through his sincere caring, through compassion, through his being. And I remember meeting with him and having a particularly rough day. And I didn't specifically say this, but the gist of it was, I'm in the tunnel, Lawrence, I'm in the tunnel. And he was like, you are in the tunnel. Turn around and look back and see where you came from. And I was just amazed to see where I had come from. Yeah, I was deep in the tunnel and I was on my way to the light. And so there are people who have jobs where they are to help and uplift and take care of people and provide resources and connect them and navigate them through bureaucracy and systems and things. And some of them really care. And so Lawrence is that guy. And it's my honor and my privilege and my pleasure to be alive and to also be a holder of the light and to present my friend to you, Lawrence Reyes, holder of the light.
Thank you, Paula. That is quite moving. And you are the holder of the light. And I think we all are here. I want to introduce myself by saying, in my language, Ekwae, which is the language of the Araqua Taino people. And I've also want to use the Lakota language and say Ometa Kease, all my relations, because I am in the midst of a incredible amount of courageous, brave people. And my sisters who have spoken ahead of me, I have the story of having 9 sisters in my life that, other than beating me up once in a while, were the holder of my light and were the holders of navigating me and loving me. And in spite of the violence and the drug addiction and alcoholism I grew up with in my home in Brooklyn, New York, my sisters held me up just like my sister Paula is holding me up now. I'm a product of the Black Panther Survival Breakfast Program in New York. I'm a Boricua, the decolonized name for what you know today as a Puerto Rican. And I was impoverished living in Harlem. And I was exposed to the Black Panther Survival Program, where again, sisters took care of me and taught me and fed me, because there was a lot of Puerto Ricans who were very hungry and we had very little sustenance to survive the streets and survive the system of oppression, the settler colonialistic system of oppression. And I'm reminded on a constant basis, and I ascribe to the philosophy of Malcolm X when he says the first method of decolonization is mental decolonization. It's mental liberation. I come from a family of 11. Like I said, 9 sisters and a brother who was subject to being content father to the war in Vietnam. And also other members of my family being content father to the war in Vietnam. I have the courage of my ancestors, which run through the Congolese in Western Africa, to the Aragua Taino Indian, and to the settler colonialist blood, which is that of Spain, which is the blood I do not recognize in my soul, because it was the blood of brutal mental anguish, genocide, and it had no human component to it. So I reach for my ancestors, and I try to operate out of that space with my ancestors. And as I been put in a position to be a mentee, as I'm mentored by Paula Estes, I'm also mentored by others that I work with. I have the fortune of rising up, going through the tunnel, but sometimes that tunnel calls me back, and I have to look back and see what's in that tunnel in order not to go back. But I rise up from a history of addiction, incarceration. I've done 2 stints in prison. I was dehumanized, as my sisters spoke of earlier. It is a system of dehumanization. It's a settler colonialistic system that looks to dehumanize people, do not take their values into account. After being placed in Rikers Island in New York when I was a young person, and being isolated, essentially in solitary confinement, because they did not let adolescents out of their cells. I was able to rise up and go to school. I ran into a counselor who also held the light, who was a Vietnam veteran, had lost various limbs. And he said something to me that I still do not remember today. I still don't remember today what it was that he said. But whatever he said triggered me to obtain a GED. When I got out of prison, I was told, one of the things I do remember him saying, that if you get a GED while you're in prison, the likelihood of you recidivizing is reduced tremendously. And I just want to recognize Livia, because I know of her organization, and I think she does great work for those formerly incarcerated people and women. And I value the work that you do, and I support every effort that you make anywhere I can. And I also support the work of other courageous presenters that are presenting here today. So I got a degree in human behavior at Brooklyn College. After I was homeless, unhoused for a long period of time, for over 10 years in New York City, living in the subway tunnels because it was warm. But I rised up to go to Brooklyn College, which was an amazing feat. And at that point in time, my mother, who is one of my ancestors, one of the things that she always told me, she said, the only responsibility you have today is to become more human, is to humanize yourself, and always work out of that space when you're working with others. So that's, and I knew, and she told me this, she told me, I know now that when you call the house, that you're not calling from a police station or from Rikers Island, because I know that you're on the right track. I I came out here to Los Angeles, California, about 23 years ago. And I went to UCLA, and I got a certification in alcohol and drug abuse counseling. I am a California certified drug and alcohol counselor. And I work for DMH, which I get a lot out of practicing the Cuban model. If Paula wants to know where that comes from, my work in terms of working with people, that's the Cuban model. I've been to Cuba 3 times, and I went to the School of Social Work in Havana. I went to the School of Social Work in Santiago de Cuba. And my skills were humanized. Cuba, the social workers go to you. They don't wait for you to come to them. They go to you, and they work with you. And doesn't matter what challenges you are facing, they go to you. So that's essentially where I come from. I'm still a young Lord. I was a young Lord at the age of 13 when I was in the Black Panther Breakfast Program. The Young Lords Party is akin to the Black Panther Party program, the Black Panther Party for Latinx people. That's what they call them now. It was just Boricuas, Latinos in the party at the time. But once a Young Lord, you never say that you're ex Young Lord. And if anybody says that they're ex Young Lord, they've probably never been a Young Lord. So that's where I get my courage from. And that's where I practice my courage. I have been steadily specializing in trauma because I've been diagnosed with PTSD and extreme trauma. One, for being homeless, unhoused for so long, and then for experience the prison industrial complex as I did. So I go to Antioch University in Los Angeles, getting the master's degree in psychology, specializing in trauma. Everybody else has set the age. I'm 63 years old, so I'm looking to retire in about 3 years. So I want to be able to still be vital and provide the kind of healing work that I'm still doing, the kind of healing work for me to stay out of that tunnel, the darkness of the tunnel. So I still do healing work. I do sweat lodges. I do personal therapy. I've done EMDR for the trauma. It helped a lot because I used to have nightmares, and they got rid of the nightmares. So what I'm essentially saying is this, and I want to thank Beth and Repair Connect for being such an awesome organization, and for Beth for being such a gentle, awesome soul, for inviting me to participate with all you courageous people on this Zoom. But what I'm trying to say is that I have the courage of my ancestors, and from everything that I've experienced, my lived experience, and the fact that the book isn't closed, the book is still open, as I continue to travel this journey, as I continue to travel in this journey to wellness and healing, and that's my responsibility, I believe, as a human being to humanity. So I just want to thank everyone for hearing me out, and I'd like to thank Paula for mentoring me and for holding the light for me today. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lawrence. Folks, feel free to take a minute to just acknowledge Lawrence in the chat before we move on to Tasneem, who's going to be our next storyteller. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tasneem Noor, who's been a friend, and her family has been full of good friends for a couple years now. She's someone I admire for a number of reasons. And among those are that she's someone who's very, very deeply engaged in interfaith dialogue and serves as the programs director for New Ground Muslim-Jewish Partnership for Change here in Los Angeles. I'll share a little bit about what's in her written bio. Tasneem is the award-winning author of the bestseller, The Faith Connection. Your journey starts with knowing yourself, and is the founder of Noor Enterprises, Soulful Transformations, which commits to providing transformational experiences, personal development, and opportunities for meaningful dialogue. Her mission is to establish thriving, peaceful communities where conversations of faith build bridges of compassion and collaboration through coaching, training, facilitation. She helps people learn how to deepen their faith, their self-trust, express themselves authentically, and take courageous action. She has a master's in education in student affairs from UCLA and worked within student affairs for 7 years on a number of campuses, including Cal State University, Los Angeles, and Santa Monica College, as well as UCLA. She is recognized by the Interreligious Council of Los Angeles as an emerging faith leader and now serves as the interfaith minister in residence with the Southern California Diocese. And she is, as mentioned, the programs director at New Ground. I appreciate about Tasneem that if I'm trying to work through some hard or important spiritual or political question, she's someone I can have a peaceful, challenging, thoughtful conversation with, in harmony, even when we're in disagreement, and in a space of mutual appreciation, even when we don't have any answers. She's a great person to think with. And I really, really am grateful for her presence in the work that we all do and in my life. So it's my honor now to turn things over to Tasneem.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I have prepared, but I wouldn't be truly courageous. I wouldn't be truly authentic if I didn't take a moment to just acknowledge what is present for me right now. After hearing all the powerful stories, oh my goodness. You're gonna hear in a moment how I share about the kind of courage I don't have and the kind of courage I do have. And the courage that you all, the storytellers, Navneet, Nikita, Lawrence, Livia, sorry, all of you have represented. I do not have that kind of courage. So much power to you, so much gratitude to you for being who you are and for being such light, such joy, so resilient, so powerful. I'm truly, 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 truly humbled and inspired and committed to doing my work even more, because the word dehumanization has come up a few times. And in all the work that I do, that's my goal, is to not have people dehumanize one another. And it's terrible no matter where it happens and no matter to whom it happens, the dehumanization. But it's even worse. Well, I don't know. I don't want to compare. It's just as bad when it happens when we don't even realize it, or when we do it in our everyday lives and just, think we're being righteous or think we're being good or think we're being commonsensical or whatnot. And it hurts. It hurts to not be treated with human dignity. It hurts to not be seen and valued as someone who is so worthy and so beautiful and so powerful and so deserving and so loving and so wise. So thank you for being courageous as you are and for inspiring me and motivating me to be the kind of courageous person I can be. And so, yeah, I'm going to take another deep breath. I was going to start my short story by sharing how I grew up and what I learned and saw about courage. I grew up learning stories about the prophets, be it Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, Noah, Adam, Jonah, whoever, so many of them, and how they stood up, you know, in the face of power and always spoke the truth with such kindness and love. I grew up with my stories of my dad, who before he got married, but when his colleagues were, you know, building their careers, he took time, 5 years, to travel the world alone by himself, making his own way as he went, and even signed up for a week-long survivor's trip in Arizona with nothing else but the clothes on his back, to push himself, to learn about himself, to know his strength and to use it well. I grew up seeing my mom be courageous in so many different ways, but one in particular, we were in Pakistan, and she calmly, politely, courageously, patiently negotiated with armed burglars. Someone holding a gun in his hand, and there were about a group of them, I think 5 or 6 of them, as they walked into the house to steal. And my mom just was so calm and had her wits the whole time. And as they came to, you know, reach for me and say, oh, we're going to take her so she can, you know, she was like, nope, that's my daughter. You're not taking her anywhere. I'll come with you. And she was that poised for the 6+ hours. They were in our house, rummaging through everything they could to take what they could find. And then there is me. It was March of 2014. I was working at Cal State LA for 5 years and ready to transition from my job, my full-time job, and pursue my own business and calling. And I remember walking into a specific, like a particular department that I partnered with, and just to exchange some paperwork or whatnot. And Denise looked at me in the eye and she said, "You're so brave for leaving your job and pursuing your dream." And I remember giving her a blank look, confused as to why she was calling me brave, because I didn't feel brave. I didn't think I was doing anything brave. I was just following my heart, my calling, and something that felt really real and important and honest for me to do. And I take you to another moment. I think the reason why I shared that specific moment right there is because that was the first time I think someone used the word brave to describe me. And up until that point, and even after, I never really associated that word with myself. The 3 words people often use to describe me, and I think sometimes I still get it, so yay, is nice, sweet, and curly hair. That's what I grew up to be known as. And I never felt brave. Like, you all, as I said, are brave. I don't know if I could negotiate with armed burglars like the way my mom did, or be as hopeful and strong the way Livia was, even throughout it all, or to shed light and, you know, and break through the silence that Navneet did, and like so much of that. And yet, here I am. Here I am as a storyteller for this topic, courage. So I don't have that kind of courage. At least I don't think. I haven't been tested, thank God, very blessed. But I have a different kind of courage. The kind of courage where I dared to look within myself and to find my own worth, because I was committed to having a positive impact. I didn't want to live life just because I have breath and a body. And, you know, I wanted to be meaningful. I wanted to have an impact. But in order to have that impact, I had to believe I was worthy enough of that impact. I had to find my own power. I had to find my own voice. I had to find my own strength and my own expression of courage. And that's the kind of courage that I have. And I'm grateful that I found it and am finding it enough to know that being me is enough. And that's the place to start. So Beth mentioned, you know, having courageous conversations with me, and even when we disagree, that's the other kind of courage that I have. Instead of going to protests and daring to, you know, face the tear gas and being locked up or something like that, which has been happening so much this year. And again, power to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being that courageous in that way. Instead of, you know, going through to the depth of Amazon forest like my dad, or negotiating with burglars like my mom, I courageously create spaces for myself and others to lean into the discomfort of conflict, of tension, of differences, of disagreements. I look to be curious and to be compassionate and to really strive to sincerely show up as who I am, and offer that same space to the other person. And the particular moment I wanted to share with you today is when I went to Nashville for a conference, and it was my first time going to a different part of United States, a state that has a very different feel and vibe than Los Angeles, California. And as I was in that conference, I met some amazing people, very kind, very loving, very wise, very devoted in their faith. And I could tell that there were some streams of Islamophobia and some thoughts and some ideas around Muslims, and I'm Muslim. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? And that fear kicked in. And there was this one particular person I really wanted to reach out to. Her name is Mary. And she didn't say anything that was just terrible or racist or Islamophobic up front, but I could just tell there was more to uncover there, right? And the fear kicked in first, saying, Tasneem, who are you? What are you going to say to this person? You're not that scholar. You're not that, you know, she's going to bring out this. And what are you going to say to that? And you don't have the right argument plan and da 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 da. And then I took a deep breath. And even deeper than that one. And I, anchored deeply in my own intention. And my intention to connect with her was not to convince her of anything or to show her that she was wrong or to argue with her. My intention was to genuinely hear her, be with her, see her, and to give her an opportunity to really see me and to hear me, who happens to be Muslim. And so she would have at least one person that she knew who identifies to be Muslim and would have something to, to rub against when she gets all the other information around Muslims and who we are supposed to be according to the media. And so I did. I was like, hey, Mary, I have a couple more hours. Would you be willing to have lunch with me? I would love to, connect. And she was so gracious. She was so kind. She picked me up from the airport. She took me to this beautiful lake over there. I don't remember the name, but it was really nice. We walked around the lake. She took me out to lunch. And then she even took me to the airport and dropped me at the airport before my flight back to LA. And while we were walking around this beautiful lake, we had the tough conversations. She asked her questions. She shared what she had heard and what she feared. And one in particular that I remember, we covered different grounds, but one thing that stands out to me is she was sharing how, she feels scared and concerned for our security when she sees people are bundled up and covered and all you can see are their eyes, and who knows what's underneath those black cloaks, and security is a real concern, and how do we deal with that? And so again, I took another deep breath, and I was like, I hear you. I feel you. If I can't see the other person's warmth, if I can't see who they are, then I too would be anxious because I don't know what to expect. And in this day and age, it shows up in so many different ways. And of course, being safe is important. And then I shared with her more about what I knew and what I had experienced. And I shared with her how I don't cover my head, but my sister does. And it is a very empowering choice for her. And her experience of navigating through public life is different than mine because she's visible as a Muslim. And then I shared with her a story of a good friend of mine from UCLA. UCLA people are representing tonight, so woohoo, go Bruins. Who I went to UCLA, and and she is an amazing woman, Muslim, covered her head, very devoted, very kind, very wise. Like, I know her spirit, I know her character, I know her mind. And a few years after graduating from UCLA, she chose to wear the niqab, which means when she goes out in public, all you see are her eyes. And so her face is covered, which is not abnormal these days, considering it's COVID and everyone is wearing masks. And I shared with her that she made that choice to wear the niqab from her own choice of devotion. And I know she's not oppressed. I know she's not brainwashed. I know who she is and I know her strength. And while others might be uncomfortable, she is comfortable enough to be true to her expression of being a Muslim woman. And so that's how I approached it. We just shared stories. We listened. We connected based on our families. We found some similarities. And that example is of a very specific conversation I sought out on my own. But I have over the years become an advocate for courageous conversations, for really going to that place where we are listening more and fearing less, where we discern more and judge less, where we heal more and bleed less, when we see and feel the person in front of us more than just their perspective or their position or their fear or their emotion, which is sometimes really painful to face, and that to me is humanizing. It's humanizing to see a person for who he or she or they are, and not just as a label. And so I'm going to wrap up with a reminder. I was so happy to read, if anyone knows Brene Brown, coming from my place of, oh, I'm not courageous, I'm not brave, not like this, not like that. And she, I'm sure I identified how courage, the root word of courage is core, and core in Latin means heart. And originally, courage meant to speak one's mind by telling of one's heart. To speak one's mind by telling of one's heart, that is courage. That is vulnerable. That is powerful. And I believe that that is transformative. Because if I didn't hear the stories and get to see the storytellers for who they are as people today, they will continue to be labels and you know, I don't know, numbers and whatnot. And I want to see you. And I say that to everybody, and I hope that people will see me for who I am and not just as a number or label or body or any of that. So with that, thank you. Woohoo. Lots of courage. Let's have courageous conversations and be courageous in our own ways, and make this world a better place. Thank you.